Mob psychology played a huge role in the Reign of Terror and the slaughtering of tens of thousands of French upper-class members and bourgeoisie. The lower class of France was fed up with being mistreated and ignored by the king and upper class. The French Revolution was a 10-year period in which the lower class began to rebel against the absolute monarchy in France. It started in 1789 and lasted until 1799. The lower class did not like Louis XVI because they did not like being ruled by an absolute monarch. The American Revolution sparked hope inside of the French people. They saw that it was possible for them to free themselves from their monarchy in France. A reason why the country was plunged into a revolution was that the French economy crashed after the American Revolution. The French had played a big role in helping the Americans win their independence. Without the help of the French, it is likely that the British would have won the war and the Americans would have lost. The French joined the war, hoping for land and money from the British. To their disappointment, they did not receive very much of either. The French had spent millions of dollars helping the Americans win, and they were rewarded with close to nothing. This major loss of money sent their economy into a downward spiral. The lower class of France did not think what the government was doing to help them was enough. They took it one step further and began to kill the French royalty. Mobs of people would come out to watch as members of the upper class or bourgeoisie were beheaded by the guillotine. The mob didn't stop killing after all the upper class members were dead. They moved on from upper class members to anyone who spoke out against what they were doing. In January of 1793, King Louis XVI was executed. A few months later, his wife Marie Antoinette also faced execution by guillotine. Maximilien Robespierre took control over the country that was now erupting into chaos. Maximilian gave a speech after the execution of King Louis XVI, saying that he believed that there are times in history when you must sacrifice one life in order to save a country. Robespierre was later executed by a group of people who overthrew him and some of his followers. It is believed that during the Reign of Terror, 40,000 people were beheaded by the guillotine. If you do the math, that is approximately 110 people a day, 10 people an hour, and one person every 5 minutes. One major problem that the country ran into after most of the royalty was dead was that there was nobody capable of ruling France. Most of the members of the mob had very little education and would not be good candidates to rule the country. This allowed for Napoleon Bonaparte to rise to power. He was part of the republic that had been put in place for the country. A few years later, he was elected to be Emperor of France. Napoleon was a general in the French army and was not in his home country at the time of the Reign of Terror. This prize saved his life. If he had been in France during this time, there's a very good chance that he would have been killed. When he returned home, he was a hero because of the battles he had won. He was also a hero because he did not overlook the lower class. He understood that no country could be successful if there was no lower class, and because of this, he treated them as if they were equal to everybody else. Many people to this day ask what could cause such a large group of people to act out so violently against their rulers. Mob psychology played a major role in the Reign of Terror. Several major factors trigger mobs and cause them to act the way they do. The first is the power that the mob members feel when they are rebelling against their leaders. This feeling of superiority is enough in most cases to push people over the edge and do things that they would not normally do. Another factor is that mob members do not feel responsible for what they have done. A mob psychologist said, "You act in a mob because if everyone is acting a certain way, the actions cannot be wrong. The mob's behavior is correct. The mob believes that because they are all doing the wrong thing, that it somehow makes what they are doing right." The mob feels that because there are enough of them doing the wrong thing, that there is no way that each and every one of them can get blamed for what they are doing. It ties in directly with the saying that says, "You don't have to outrun the bear, just your friend." The members of the mob feel that if something goes wrong, they only have to outrun the person next to them, and they won't be blamed for what they have done. The last factor that went into the execution of 40,000 French people was the do or die mentality. Once you are part of a mob, it is very difficult to break free from the group, especially because in the Reign of Terror, if you left the mob, you would most likely be killed, and you would be putting your family at risk as well. The hardest is when you join a group, and at the time they have good objectives, and then they slowly turn into a mob that is violent, and they begin to break the law. The Reign of Terror was a bloody time in French history. The corrupt government, the failing economy, and the hope for reformation of the government led to the lower class joining together to take down the upper class. No one could have foreseen the magnitude of the destruction that the lower class could elicit once they got a taste of power. In the end, 40,000 people lost their lives to gain the voice for the lower class.